Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the February 26, 2018 McCracken County Fiscal Court meeting. This time, I'd call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Here.
Commissioner Byer.
Here.
Commissioner Walden.
Here.
And Judge Leeper.
Here. This time, I'd call on Commissioner Bartleman to lead us in a word of prayer.
Thank you. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for the blessings of this day. We thank you for the opportunity we have to serve you. Pray you be with us tonight, Father, as we consider the business of this county and help us to make the decisions that will be glorified in your life. We're thankful for our first responders, for sheriffs, deputies, police officers, firefighters, ambulance workers, and others. Father, we just pray you continue to be with them and give them safety as they perform their duties to protect this county and protect the people of this county. Father, we're just so thankful for what you do for us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
If you would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the February 12th meeting. A motion by Commissioner Bartleman, second by Commissioner Byer. Do we have any discussions? Seeing none, we'll ask the clerk to call. I'm sorry, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion's approved. We have two items, or actually three items on the agenda for discussion tonight. Our first item, I believe, we saw a representative from Mark Bryant's office. Miss Emily Rourke is here to discuss some options as states across the country deal with opioid litigation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I apologize. I think I have my voice is terrible, but I have a handout here, if I may. Should be more than enough. And I have a cold, so I'm really sorry. I'll let everybody get a copy of that. Mark is in Tennessee right now trying a case, so he apologizes for not being here. Most of you are probably familiar with this litigation. It's going on all over the country. But basically, what this litigation is that jurisdictions on every level, the state, the county, the cities, can file suit and recover for the opioid epidemic. And what would happen is we would file suit in the Western District of Kentucky on behalf of the county, and then it would be removed into the MDL, the Mass District litigation. And I think one myth maybe that's out there is that because the state is in the process of possibly being involved in this, is that that money would make its way down to the county, and that probably would not happen. And so this particular litigation that we're proposing could be used particularly for whatever the county chose. So obviously the opioid epidemic has hit particularly the court system, whether it be directly from a DUI or just from possession of opioids, and that could be used for the sheriff's department, it can be used for the court system, it can be used for drug programs. It's basically going to be used at the discretion of the county. And we believe, of course we never know, that this litigation will probably move pretty quickly. They're comparing it to the litigation with tobacco. And of course there were a few states that decided to stay out of that, and now they wish they had not have done that. But there's no threat. There's nothing that the county would be out, of course, and it's something that would only be useful to Paducah and the county. Basically, the underlying issue is that the manufacturers did not tell the doctors the correct information about opioids, and therefore it was far more addictive than they originally led them to believe, and that information was intentionally withheld. So I'm happy to answer any questions. There's some statistics in here.
How would you prove that it was an intentionally withheld? How would you?
Well, because it's a mass district litigation, what happens is all the discovery is done by the MDL. And so most of that has already been established. Most of that discovery has already been established. So we would become part of the mass district litigation. It would be removed to, I think it's in, I want to say it's in Ohio. So our case would be removed to Ohio within the mass district litigation, and that's what causes it to move so quickly. It's not a class action; it's a mass district litigation, sort of like the HIP cases. I don't know if you guys remember those, and so discovery doesn't become costly that way, and it becomes very, very easy to do. The way you do that is through discovery. You get their research.
Let me ask two things. One, I like stats, and I was just curious about the 88 local deaths from drug overdoses. Is that broken down into opioid-related drug overdoses? And would this litigation be based on strictly opioid-related drug overdoses, or because there's other things you can overdose on besides this opioids?
So
I was wondering if that stat is, it says 88 deaths were from drug overdoses, and then it says prescription opioid abuse is a gateway to heroin. And you may not know this, I'm just curious because I like stats. I'm just curious if those 88, if there's any, if that can be all sorts of drug overdose. I assume because it doesn't say drug overdoses related to opioids, that's a general 88.
hold on, let me find that.
I think it's the third page.
The third.
It's the first parentheses on the third page of the,
I don't know that for sure.
that's just my curiosity. The other question, probably more to the point, is you mentioned, because we've had somebody that came or contacted me, and I think contacted some of the other commissioners in one of the CAECO conferences, who was a law firm based in Florida, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
First I'd heard about this litigation. And then we obviously had the Attorney General's office. We had contact with people from the Attorney General's office, and now your all's firm. And I'm curious, you alluded to the fact that it might be more difficult to get any funds to the local level from an effort by the Attorney General than possibly you or another firm. Is that based on other experiences from other, or did I misunderstand?
You didn't misunderstand. I believe that most of the state, the Attorney General, he has a suit going right now. Of course, he's in either the Attorney General or the Governor, however that plays out. I believe we'll have a suit. But I think most of that will be, if not all of it, to recover Medicaid funds for the state. And I think that's what that's going to be for. If that's for anything else, then that will surprise me. So I don't see that will trickle down to the counties and the cities. The litigation that we're involved in, and we have counties in Kentucky, Georgia. My husband and another attorney in our firm are on their way to a county in Georgia right now to talk to a county there, and then we have counties in Florida, or at the local level, because I don't think that this money will get down to the county level. So I think the state is to recover those Medicaid funds, because I do think those are out there, and it's a good thing. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. We definitely need to ask that question of those people that are promoting the other strategy. Anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Barlow.
Would this be part of CAECO's lawsuit? CAECO has filed, the Kentucky Association of Counties has filed a suit, and they've got 40 or 50 counties at least, or maybe more involved in that. Would this become part of that or separate?
No, this would be a separate lawsuit, yes. And, you know, there's a lot of counties that have filed lawsuits. Like, surprisingly, there are many counties that are already part of this MDL. If we're one of the ones that have not done it, but many counties, even in this area, have already joined into this. So CAECO may have done this, and I don't know what CAECO has filed directly. I can find that out for you. But many counties have already joined this. And the other firm that contacted you, I don't know what they did that, what exactly they're filing. But when there is a mass district litigation, there are going to be a lot of firms that are going to file suits. And then they're all going to be filed in the Western District of Paducah for this county. And then they're going to be transferred to where the mass district litigation's going on. And one judge handles all of them because they're all similarly situated litigation. But I don't know what CAECO's done. That may be a separate litigation altogether. I don't know that.
Yeah, I was just looking at the email we got from them last year, and there were 4 or 5 law firms involved in that. How many Kentucky counties are already committed and involved in your litigation?
I think we have we had 13, but before, we probably have about 15 now because we just signed one up last week. So we probably have about 15 Kentucky counties.
Under your agreement, what percentage would go to the law firm and what percentage would go to the counties?
It's a good question. Normally, the way that we do it would be 40%, but that probably will not. What ends up happening in the mass district litigation is it really doesn't matter what the agreement is, that the judge ends up setting the fee, and it ends up being much lower than that. Also, when we do contracts with counties and governments, sometimes we end up negotiating that. Sometimes.
The CAECO was 30% went to the law firm, 70% went to the counties.
So, and that's something that sometimes gets negotiated with counties when we do it with the Attorney General's office and other governments.
What effect does it have when if there's 4 or 5 different lawsuits out there that are part of a master lawsuit involving counties? What effect does that have on the settlement? Are you better off being with a suit that's got a lot of counties in it or a few counties in it, or do they usually consolidate all those and,
Right, they will all be consolidated in the mass district litigation that's in Cleveland, Ohio.
So more than likely, whoever's involved in the CAECO action, and if you're involved and others are involved, eventually they probably all would be merged into one suit.
Right. As soon as we file it in the Western District of Kentucky, and it has to be filed in the Western District of Kentucky, it will then immediately be transferred. It will probably be transferred by Judge Russell to Cleveland, Ohio. But just because it's a mass district litigation that's already involved, that's just the procedure that has to happen. But if it was any mass district litigation, if it was any other kind of, any time there's a mass district litigation going on, and we're involved in lots of different kinds of mass, say it's a bad hip or a bad knee. If that's an already open MDL, then you have to file it in the district where your client lives, and then it immediately will get transferred by that judge to where the MDL is. So that is going to happen. And the reason that happens is because that one judge handles it and it gets settled faster. The talk is, and the hope is that these cases will get settled quickly. Now, quickly in the legal realm is a couple years, but that is the hope, in these cases.
Do you have other law firms involved in what
Yes.
you're doing?
Yes. We are working with firms in Alabama and Florida in these cases. In fact, Mr. Bryant is is trying the case right now in Tennessee with some of the firms that we're with. And so there is a group of attorneys that we work with in these cases.
So there'll be a lot of counties and different states involved in.
Yes, sir.
It's
Yes.
not just Kentucky or West Kentucky.
Yes, sir. And we'll be happy to provide you all those names and CVs and anything that you would need.
I just wonder if there's an advantage or a disadvantage if we were to decide to join the CAECO action or your action, if there's an advantage or disadvantage either way.
Sure. And, what we may need to check into is if you could join both of those, and that might be a possibility as well.
Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No?
Thank you for being
Thank
here. I
you.
hope you get feeling better soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item for discussion, we have our Sheriff, John Hayden, and our Captain Detectives, Matt Carter. Let the Sheriff.
Good evening, Judge, Commissioners. I wanted to speak to you all just briefly about an issue that's on everybody's minds right now, weighing on everybody's hearts, and that is the school shooting that we experienced in Marshall County on February the 14th. That morning, we actually were made aware of that situation almost immediately. We have a couple of deputy sheriffs whose children attend that school that called them immediately as it was occurring. So we were made aware of that almost instantly. Within 10 minutes of the first call, we had 2 units on scene at the school, and probably within 20 minutes we had 8 to 9 units at the school. They actually assisted in clearing classrooms and evacuating students, things of that nature. We also were able to assist in some of the students that were injured were brought to Lourdes Hospital, and we were able to put some units at Lourdes Hospital. Captain Matt Carter was one of them that actually assisted the state police in collecting some evidence from some of the victims that were driven to the hospital in Paducah. Needless to say, some of our employees that responded to that scene had a little difficulty with what they saw, what they experienced. 2 days after that incident, we had a debriefing session with some of the units that responded. Judge Leeper actually attended that. And I asked the school board, McCracken County School Board Superintendent, to attend that. The high school principal, Mr. Siglinski, was there, and some other staff from the Board of Education. We wanted them to actually hear from the units that were there what they experienced, what they saw, things that in their minds went well, and maybe some things that didn't go well, in hopes of learning as much about these situations as we possibly can. There's still a few of us around that were here in 1997 when we had the Heath shooting. Who would have ever thought that we would have had one, much less, we've had another one right here in our backyard. With that being said, we have had an open dialogue, continue to have an open dialogue with the Board of Education. Myself and the Chief Deputy Turnbow attended the school board meeting last week. We've had many conversations about possible changes to security at our county schools. There's lots of things being discussed on the local level, state level, and federal level dealing with that issue. Just today I had a very lengthy conversation with the school board chairman at CCA out south of Lone Oak, They're obviously concerned, looking for ideas and things to possibly implement. One thing that we did do immediately after the Marshall County shooting, parents were absolutely horrified about sending their kids to school the next day. The teachers, staff, they were uneasy. It was difficult, but we pulled all of our staff in and actually had them at all the county schools the following day, or the following 2 days. We had them there at the schools when the students arrived. The deputies, uniformed deputies, stayed at the schools and assisted the resource officers throughout those 2 or 3 days following the Marshall County incident. And that, I think, put a lot of minds at ease a little bit. But I, like everyone, are looking for solutions. I've had some conversations with some of our state leaders about possible legislation. There's been some things proposed, again, on the state level and federal level, and we're anxiously awaiting to see what may come from some of that. Do appreciate you, Judge, attending that debriefing session. I think it meant a lot to the guys that you were there, knowing that you all support, what they're doing, and I just want to thank you for that. Do y'all have any questions?
John, are we making sure that those deputies that responded, do we have professional counselors available to them through our?
Yes, we make that available to them. Judge Leeper reiterated that to them when we had our debriefing session with them that day. Certainly, we see an employee having issues, we will see to it that they get the help that they need, the counseling.
Thank you. What you do.
Thank you.
John, is there any kind of things that you can talk about, that suggestions that maybe that are kind of coming forth that may be helpful in these situations?
A lot of the
Psychological.
suggestions that have been brought up on the state level and the federal level, we've been talking about those here. Some of the things that are being discussed nationally, we have actually started that discussion weeks before. A lot of people are having some of the same ideas. Some people think they'll work, some people don't. But I can tell you that there's a lot of people in positions to make changes that are working very, very hard trying to come up with some solutions. Obviously, there's no easy answers and there's no easy solutions, or they would have been implemented years ago.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate it.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I was asked to discuss our 2017 crime stats with you all, go over them briefly, and then certainly try to answer any questions that you may have. Beginning on this first page, part 1 of our offense data, the murders were down 50%, rapes down 7%, robbery stayed the same at 4%. Our assaults were down slightly, 18%. Burglaries did have an increase of 33%. Larceny increased by 13%, as well as auto thefts 18%, for a total of a 15% increase in the Part 1 offenses. If you look at that, majority of everything was down, with the exception of everything surrounding a larceny or a theft type of a crime. And unfortunately, the reality to that is very quite simple. Drugs is such a powerful root that so many times is affiliated with those type of crimes. Give you just a quick overview of that. For example, crystal methamphetamine is at an all-time high. We're battling it every single day. You can pick up the paper at almost any given moment and see where we've made multiple arrests per night or per day. Our guys are working hard to combat this problem. And unfortunately, where you had to travel as far as Phoenix, Arizona to bring in large quantities of crystal methamphetamine, now you can travel to within the state just a few hours away and bring that in. Another problem that we're combating with that is back just a few short years ago, an ounce of crystal meth would run about $1,600 to $1,800 an ounce. Now we've seen it go as low as $650 an ounce. So it's just it's a problem that law enforcement across the nation, along with us, is combating daily, and that's certainly a contributor to many of these crimes. So many times a user cannot successfully feed that addiction, so they result in committing thefts and burglaries and things that they can obtain tangible objects to trade or sell to support that habit. Going to page 2 here, the simple assaults up just slightly, 4% is what that was up. Forgery up 41%. Fraud was down 17%. Criminal mischief up 44%. Weapons violation crimes were down 58%. Sex offenses other than rape was down 18%. And our drug violations were up 21%. Offenses against family and child up 45%. Again, a lot of this will tie into drugs. So many times you see that there's a ripple effect that directly relates to drugs. And I just want to point out on those drug violations, our drug arrests went from 598 to 726. You can look at that two ways. That's a bad thing for the fact that we have drugs here in McCracken County, but it's a good thing in showing that our men and women are out proactively enforcing our drug laws and making those arrests and them increasing greatly from 2016. On that arrest data, the DUIs were down slightly. It was down 18%. I just mentioned the drug arrests being up 21%. All others up 15% for a total of an increase of about 14% in our arrest. The last page dealing with our accidents, our fatal injuries were down 55% from 11 to 5. Injury accidents just up slightly, 2%, and our non-injury accidents up slightly, just the 2% increase. So overall down. Another thing that I want to mention is we have recently acquired some new equipment for obvious reasons. I won't go into great detail. Be glad to speak to any of you all on the side about the details of this, but we've acquired some new equipment that we're excited about, that we believe that we're going to be able to proactively combat some of these thefts. So many thefts are kind of a crime of opportunity. Folks will be out, they'll see something in someone's yard or a garage door open, and they'll take that opportunity to take those items. So we've got some ways, again, without going into great detail, that we are excited about, that we believe we're going to be able to proactively combat that a little more so. And here in the near future, we've just gotten that equipment in. So any questions?
I guess a couple of observations. There's a couple things that amaze me. It amazes me the older members of our population who are involved in drugs. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was young people. They were in their teens, their early 20s, maybe even early 30s. They'd be involved in drugs. They would get caught, and they'd do their time, and they'd probably straighten out. But I think I saw a report out, one of your reports today, there was somebody 50-some years old arrested for meth.
Right.
That happens all the time. We had grandmothers arrested for meth charges, and that just really amazes me. Also, the statistics on drugs, you're arresting an average of 2 people a day on drug charges, and that's just amazing. And probably for every one you arrest, there's probably 1 or 2 more out there who aren't arrested.
Sure.
You could probably stop every other car on the interstate, maybe. That's probably a little, a little inflated, but I mean, it is amazing, the drug problem. And it's getting worse instead of better. When they adopted all these new laws on some of the items used to make meth, they thought they would be down. I think it might have been down for a while. Then there was if I remember, a lot of drugs coming in from Mexico and Arizona and all, and some of that was stopped. And now if you can drive 2 hours in Kentucky and get a large quantity, that's just really scary of how that happens. And the big thing is not the 743 people or whatever the number was, or 700 some arrested on drugs. That's where it comes from. And I guess when you shut off one supply, another one pops up pretty quickly. So it just amazes me that again, the older people involved in drugs and the numbers. I mean, it increases all the time. And again, if you were out and set up roadblocks and stopped every car, you'd probably have twice as many. But we appreciate the work you do on that, and it's a never-ending. Sometimes you're involved in professions where you feel like you're making an accomplishment, and you are making accomplishments by taking care of these, but it gets worse instead of better. It's just not deterring crime. But anyway, we appreciate all the work you've done and the staff. It's sometimes a thankless job to be out at 2 a.m. and stop a car on Clarks River Road that somebody didn't have on the seatbelt, and they all had meth on them. So we just appreciate all the work you do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes, is heroin a problem here in McCracken County as well?
Heroin exists. Respectfully, I don't know how we wanted to define problem. On the average, we usually have about a dozen arrests of heroin, in between about a half a dozen and a dozen heroin arrests per year. My experience and what I've seen, the trend with heroin, it will be, obviously it's probably expands a little beyond the groups that we see, but we'll arrest 2 or 3 people out of a group that's running together that's using heroin, that's their drug of choice. There'll be somewhat of a domino effect within that group, and at least on the surface would appear we'll kind of get a handle on that for at least a moment in time, and then as those folks bond out of jail or get released for whatever reason, then they'll kind of get back together and it'll kind of spike a little bit again. Fortunately, I don't believe that we've seen nowhere near the influx of heroin in our particular areas they have in the eastern part of the states. And I think that's proven true for the opioids. Not that that's not a problem, but fortunately, I think that's a little further east of us than what the folks in the eastern part of the state, central part of the state are experiencing right now.
Well, again, I'd like to commend you guys. According to the media, if you're a person that sells meth, a drug dealer, McCracken County is not a place you want to be in. I appreciate all that you guys do. Thank you.
Our officers, do we have steps in place to protect them, because some of these drugs can be ingested just through breathing,
Yes.
and do we have a program to make sure that they're safe?
We're constantly getting bulletins and updates from various intel sources that we will make our men and women aware of by way of email or even in person, making them aware of different trends and different styles of transport that the drug traffickers are utilizing. So doing everything that we can. Obviously, we're in a business that is dangerous overall, and that's just unfortunately one of the many things that causes that danger to increase. And certainly there are some very dangerous drugs out there, as you've already mentioned, that just through ambient air can be deadly, and has been for officers across the nation that we read about and hear about. So as best we can, we keep everyone educated as that information comes in and get that passed along for their safety.
And our officers are carrying Narcan?
Yes, and I think we've had at least 3 or 4 instances where arguably there's been at least 2 or 3 people that I know of, their life was saved as a result of our deputies administering that. And obviously that could be administered to self or used on us as well. But in the instances that we've used them, it's been on citizens that have overdosed.
For the people at home that don't know what that is, could you explain what that is?
Basically, it's just it's a neutralizer. It will neutralize an effect of a drug, and the good thing is for an officer to have a requirement of being able to accurately diagnose the symptoms. If any one of us in this room took Narcan right now, it wouldn't have any effect on us. It's only a reversal agent in the event that there's an overdose, creating a medical emergency.
Thank you.
I have one more question. Yes. Several years ago, there was a case involving I think a teenager who was high on some kind of a drug, and he tried to get into a neighbor's house and thought he was going into his house, and he was shot. Do you remember that case?
Yes.
What was that drug, and is that still around?
There's been 2 that I recall. One was mushrooms.
Right, it was mushrooms.
And that was mushrooms. That was back in the early 2000s, 05, 06, somewhere around that time frame. The one that is that the one that
I think it
you're
was
talking
mushroom,
about?
right,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, is that still, I mean, I think it came and went, but is that still, do you see that?
Yeah.
Any problem with that?
It has been a while fortunately, since we have seen that particular drug. Drugs are similar to, I don't know, food choices. You may have someone that will take a notion to attempt something new, or if it's available to them, they may try something new. But for the most part, I think it would be fair to say a lot of people are kind of set in their ways with the drug of choice for whatever reason.
Yeah. I remember in that case, his brother or somebody gave him the drug, or a family member or something, and it was...
Yeah, there was a gathering, and then he walked a
Right.
short distance, and
Right.
of course,
And he thought he was at his house. And
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Captain, in your statistics, I'm just curious, you talked about how drugs are involved in so many of these. When you separate out the drug violations, is that indicative of drug violations only, or could some of those also be involved in some of these other offenses?
for the purpose of these
From the stats.
statistics, that is for drug arrest only. A lot of times it's difficult to unequivocally prove that tie or what percentage of that tie, mainly just going by the multiple interviews that I'll just speak personally that I've been involved with and affiliated with over the years. These individuals will tell you that they can't afford their habit, so they're out breaking into houses and committing various other crimes in order to support their habit. A lot of times an assault, the stabbings that you hear about, the assaults on the street, not in every single case, but in so many of those cases, it may be as a result of a drug debt that's owed, or someone believes that they were short a purchase that they made. The dealer shorted them, and that results into street violence. But as far as the statistics here, that's dealing with strictly the drug violations and arrest only. No additional ties to that.
Okay.
I apologize. I got one more question. If you know the answer to this. They've increased the speed limit on US 45 to 65 miles an hour. Have you noticed any increase in accidents since it's gone to 65 miles an hour, or do you know the answer to that?
Not that I'm directly aware of.
I was just curious.
I don't believe that there's been an increase in the number of accidents. What we have seen are the accidents that we have had, they've been a little more severe because of the higher velocity of the vehicles, obviously.
Okay.
But
All right, I was just
I'll check that data. And,
Okay.
I'll
I'm just
get back to
curious.
you.
Thank you.
Thank both of y'all for being here tonight. Appreciate your service, and I appreciate being involved in the meeting with the deputies. It's an eye-opener. I wish nobody had to experience it, but I appreciate being a part of listening to those ladies and gentlemen who had the emergency management folks were there also, and the EM Mercy Regional folks were there also, and it's important to be able to understand what they experienced, and I hope they're all doing well, and if they're not, I hope they'll take advantage of the opportunities we provide for them, because they mean a lot to us, as I said that night, and their ability to serve the community is paramount to us. So we hope things are going well for them, and they'll take advantage if they're not. And thank you, gentlemen, for your service, your leadership. All right. That being said, we're going to move on to the budget transfers. Mr. Treasurer.
It is ordered to make the following cash transfers in order to pay county bills approved February 26, 2018 in the amount of $314,900.09.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Byer, second by Commissioner Wathen. Any discussion? Seeing none, ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Wathen?
Aye.
Commissioner Byer?
Aye.
Commissioner Bartleman?
Aye.
And Judge Leeper?
Aye. Next, Mr. Treasurer, the accounts payable.
It is ordered to approve the vouchers claims register from February 12, 2018 to February 26, 2018 to show county bills in the amount of $590,843.98. And I'd like to point out that that's $9,000 more than the packet that you received on Friday. That's due to a late arrival of a utility bill that needed to get paid by the 1st for a discount.
Any discussion?
So,
Second.
Have a motion by Commissioner Watson, second by Commissioner Bartleman. Any discussion? Seeing none, ask clerk call roll, please.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Wathen.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye. Madam Clerk?
It is ordered that subsequent to a public hearing held February 12, 2018, pursuant to due notice and viewers having filed a report stating that no parties would be inconvenienced, approximately 1,320 feet of Old Hinkleville Road, also known as CR 1,400, from Roy Lee Road, also known as Kentucky 1565, to the previously closed Y intersection at Old US Highway 60, also known as Kentucky 3520, be closed and removed from the county road system.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Byer, second.
Second.
Commissioner Watson, any discussion? Seeing none, ask clerk call roll, please.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Wathen.
Aye.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye.
It is ordered that a bid opening was held at 10:05 a.m. on January 24, 2018, at the McCracken County Courthouse for disposal of 22 handguns, Gen 3 and Gen 4 Glock model, belonging to the McCracken County Sheriff's Office. One bid was received from Keisler's Police Supply. This bid was taken under advisement.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Watson, second by Commissioner Bartleman. Any discussion? Any questions? Ask clerk call roll, please.
Commissioner Wathen.
Aye.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye.
It is ordered to award the bid for disposal of the McCracken County Sheriff's Office 22 handguns, Gen 3 and Gen 4 Glock model, to Keisler's Police Supply. We accepted the one and only bid in the amount of $280 per Gen 3 and $290 per Gen 4 handgun disposal.
Question about that.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Bartleman, second
Second.
by Commissioner Byer.
Is that per gun that it costs to dispose of it, or is that the total cost? Is it $280 per gun?
That's correct. That's what they're giving.
They're paying us.
Oh, they're paying us?
Sure.
Oh, okay. Okay. And they're recycled by this company, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
We're replacing it with grant funds. Any other discussion? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Sheriff. Ask clerk call roll, please.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Wathen.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye.
It is ordered that Tyler Nolan resign his position as road deputy effective March 1st, 2018. Tyler does not have any accumulated vacation or sick time.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Byer, second by Commissioner Bartleman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, ask clerk call roll, please.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Wathen.
Aye.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye.
It is hereby ordered that pursuant to the monetary reimbursement restrictions and calculations set forth in Kentucky Revised Statute Sections 15.765 and 15, it's the same thing, and 15.765. The salary of the McCracken County Attorney is hereby adjusted to $49,645.51. Said amount being subject to all legal deductions and further orders of the court. This amount shall be retroactive to January 1st, 2018.
Motion
So moved.
by Commissioner Byer, second.
Second.
By Commissioner Watson. Mr. Skinner, do you have any idea? The county attorney wrote this himself, so he's not here to defend himself. Do you have any idea what the second section's supposed to be?
No, sir, I don't have any idea, honestly.
Are you gentlemen comfortable voting on this and coming back with an amendment later time, or would everybody's comfortable with that?
I think we're comfortable, and that we can just have him correct a typo.
All right. Obviously typo.
Whatever it is. Not a typo, but maybe he referred to the wrong one.
All right. Madam Clerk, we'll make sure we get a correction of that before we formally file the minutes.
Okay.
Ask you to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Wathen.
Aye.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye.
It is ordered to pay Jim Smith Contracting Company, LLC, pay application number 10 in the amount of $8,158.44 for Maxon Road Improvement Project.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner
Second.
Watson, second by Commissioner Byer. Any further discussion? Seeing none, ask clerk to call roll, please.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Wathen.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye.
It is ordered to pay Cornerstone Detention Products, Inc., pay application number 2 in the amount of $291,750 for security locking updates at the McCracken County Jail.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner
Second.
Byer, second by Commissioner Bartleman. Any further discussion?
How, are they finished with that, or are they still working on it, or can you give us an update?
Mr.
on
Moore,
that?
would you come? Mr. Moore has been working on this for months and months, and we're making some good progress, but I'll let him talk about it.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Commissioners. No, we're not finished. We're about 65% complete. There's two types of activity here. We have the corridor doors, and we have the sliding doors. The corridor doors are also sliders, but they're not in the day rooms. All the corridor doors are complete, and 65% of the total project is complete. That dollar amount is, we're not 65% complete time-wise because we've bought all the materials and are stored here at the jail. And so we're finishing up 4 of the day room. The 4th one will be done this week, and we've got 8 more to go. And they do 1 a week, so it'll be about 7 weeks after this week to do it. Wrap it up.
So it's going well? I mean, your
Yes, it
workplace
is. Everything's going good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? One other point on this issue, we will, due to some legislation that was able to contact Senator Danny Carroll, and Representative Rudy looked into a piece of legislation that was going through that was going to allow some of the commissary funds to be used to help complete this project. And that bill, last I looked, was still sitting on the governor's desk, but I think he's probably signing it today or tomorrow. So that will allow us, and we asked for an emergency clause to be put on it so that we could use it for this project. And they did that successfully with the agreement of the bill sponsor, Representative York, agreed to that. So it's sitting on the governor's desk. When it's passed, and the jailer's already agreed to use some of the commissary money to help pay for this project and take some of that off the general fund. So we appreciate that effort by our legislators and also by our jailer. That being said, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Wathen.
Aye.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye.
It is ordered to accept the resignation of Nathan Young, full-time sergeant deputy jailer, effective February 16, 2018. He has no vacation time accumulated and 3 sick days to be credited to the Kentucky retirement systems.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Watson, second by Commissioner Byer. Any further discussion? Ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Wathen.
Aye.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye.
It is ordered to accept the resignation of Richard Sled, part-time deputy jailer, effective February 20th, 2018.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Watson, second by Commissioner Bartleman. Any further discussion? Ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Wathen.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye.
It is hereby ordered that pursuant to KRS Chapter 67, the first reading of ordinance number 2018-01 shall be conducted in summary format as follows. An ordinance repealing ordinances 2014-01, which set forth alcoholic beverage licensing requirements, and 2009-02, fixing the opening and closing times for the retail sales of alcoholic beverages, and enacting the present ordinance combining the licensing requirements and hours of operation for retail sales of alcoholic beverages with a single ordinance. The present ordinance is designed to simplify compliance and enforcement of the McCracken County alcoholic beverages licensing and retail sales regulations by consolidating all regulations on this topic into a single comprehensive ordinance, and by ensuring that all pronouncements therein are in compliance with state regulations, as well as being uniform to the regulations imposed by the City of Paducah to the greatest extent possible. It is hereby certified by the McCracken County Fiscal Court that the present summary represents an accurate official statement of the main points of and contents of ordinance number 2018-01. Ordinance number 2018-01 shall be available for public inspection in its whole and complete form in the McCracken County Judge Executive's office during ordinary business hours.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Commissioner Byer, second by Commissioner Watson. Any discussion? in the audience? Seeing none, ask clerk call roll, please.
Commissioner Bartleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Waden.
Aye.
Commissioner Byer.
Aye.
And Judge Leeper.
Aye. Madam Clerk, are there any board appointments? I'm not aware of any. Before we go into executive session, do any of the commission members have any comments?
Probably need to give Mr. Clymer credit for this ordinance that he worked so diligently on to make it conform to the state regulations and also to the consistent with city regulations. And so I do appreciate the hard work that he did on that and in preparing that ordinance.
I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate him very much. He has put a lot of time in on that along with our updated ordinance. One of the things I wanted to get done in this 4-year period is to get our ordinances online, and he continued to see that notebook open in his office when I go over there to check with him a couple times a day. He's still working on that, and this will be able to be added to that. So that's very timely. We appreciate that. If there are no other comments, we are going to have a brief executive session. Don't intend to take any action after the executive session. I did want to make a couple of comments. People are aware we've had an emergency declaration due to the rising river. Obviously, we got sunshine, but the water's headed this way, so it will continue to rise and crest. Hopefully, the actions by the city to put the floodgates up and other actions by our road department to put pumps in will not be absolutely necessary, but preparation is key in these type situations. And our road department and I believe the city are working together to protect our citizens and their property. Another issue that's kind of timely and on all our minds is budget starting. Our treasurer's doing a lot of work already on that, and I appreciate his efforts. He's getting a lot of good information for us. We'll come with a schedule at the next meeting, temporary or proposed schedule, I should say, for our budget workshops. But also, with that said, I just want to alert people, the legislature's in session. They're working with a very difficult budget of their own. Part of that effort deals with pensions. There are two potential outcomes at this time. One is that they don't take any action on pensions. And one is there's three. They passed the bill that's been proposed in the Senate. I believe it's Senate Bill 1. Either one of those, without a phase-in, would require, I believe, Mr. Treasurer, over $1 million of additional funds to go just in the retirement payments for our employees. That's before we start figuring out how to spend what revenue increases we get. $1 million just straight off of our budget. That's a very daunting figure. We're going to be trying to deal with that if that's the outcome of the legislative session. And that's the worst possible scenario. The best possible scenario is not real good. If somebody had told me that we were going to have to deal with over $200,000 increased costs, I would have said that's going to be tough to do. And that's the best possible scenario. If they do the phase-in, which is a different Senate bill, or excuse me, it's a House bill, a different House bill number. If they do the phase-in, we will be required to pay 10% of what we paid this year into the retirement fund, and that will be over $200,000 additional, just that 10%. That's a lot of money for our budget, so we are going to really have to roll up the sleeves regardless of the outcome of those three pieces of legislation and do the best we can for our citizens. That being said, on a slightly lighter note, but a positive note, our staff continues to work to find savings as we've done for the past 3 years and 2 months, and we put some policies in place that aren't always popular, but they're appropriate, and we've done that such with a cellular phone policy. We've put a policy in place, talked to some other elected officials and department heads, and found something that we feel confident is good. And just so you know that that does have an effect. There was some perception that, it's an unlimited this, unlimited that, and it doesn't really cost anything. But we actually found out as of last week that we were going to save several thousands of dollars a year just from that effort alone in just a cellular phone bill. So there are consequences to unlimiteds. You can bring those down. And the effort of Mr. Cannon, who is in our planning and zoning department, and other staff members have helped us to save the taxpayers some more money and have appropriate use of funds. And I'm very proud of every dime we can do that with. It is kind of what I'm about. If we're going to spend the taxpayers' money, we're going to spend it appropriately and as wisely as possible. So always proud of every dime we can get, and that's not a large amount of money when you're talking a $2,000 or $200,000 bill coming at us, but it shows the taxpayers that you and I and the staff people are trying to do their best by the taxpayers. So just wanted to make you all aware of that. With that being said, I'd entertain a motion for an executive session, which I promise will be relatively brief.
I hereby move the board go into closed session for discussion of matters pertaining to the following topics. Proposed or pending litigation is permitted by KRS 61-810-1C. A specific proposal by a business entity or public discussion of the subject matter would jeopardize the location, retention, expansion, or upgrading of a business entity is permitted by KRS 61-810-1G, and topics required by state or federal law to be conducted in secret as permitted by KRS 61-810-1K.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved. We'll be in executive session for a brief period.